just like a marriage, she challenges me to be a better boss and to be a better business person. So does my sister Tara. And I think that your partner should challenge you to do better.
That was Kathleen Shannon, and this is episode 66 of the Chopped Podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Marley of the blog Namely Marley. I'm your host, and this is the Chopped Podcast. You know, this is the podcast designed for people just like you, bloggers who love food. My goal is to share with you interviews, thoughts, and stories, everything related to food blogging so that we can all learn together about what works with food blogging, and maybe even a little bit about what doesn't. Today, I'm talking to Kathleen Shannon. She's the co-host of the podcast Bean Boss, and she's also with the company Braid Creative. Kathleen and I are talking today about a couple of really delicious topics. First and foremost, we're talking about how to go about creating healthy business partnerships. Because I've noticed more and more food bloggers coming together to work on projects. Maybe it's a cookbook or an e-course, or maybe it's something as big as a new site together. However it is that you're working with others, I think it's important to really understand what you're getting out of that partnership and to outline some of the expectations. I speak from experience of this in my former life. Before I was a blogger, I entered into some partnerships and I had great expectations and a lot of assumptions of trust, only to be burned afterwards. It's not a great feeling, and I'd love to spare anyone else of that experience if possible. So Kathleen talks about the importance of having tough conversations and understanding expectations and having an agreement and what kind of things can be in that agreement. But we also talk about authenticity. You know, I love this topic, and come to find out, Kathleen loves it too. So we had a really good chat about that topic. She is one of those people who seems to be very comfortable with herself, not afraid to be out there with her appearance. She was voted most nonconformist in high school. High school people, that's when most of us are worried, someone might notice that we're not wearing the exact same jeans as everybody else. And Kathleen was cool enough with herself to be, out there and voted a nonconformist. So I love that. I love the discussion with her on this topic because she shed some really interesting light on it, and I can't wait to share it with you. Basically, she says the goal of authenticity is to have your outsides feel like how you feel on the inside. It's such great stuff. I love it. Okay, so before we go into that discussion with Kathleen, just a quick reminder to go to choppedcon.com today and click on register to buy your ticket to the Chopped Conference. It's really a conference like no other. It's a place where you will feed your thirst for knowledge about food blogging, your spirit by connecting in a meaningful way with other creative entrepreneurs, and your stomach, quite literally, with some great food. So Chopped Conference has it all. I hope to see you there. So let's get right to today's feature interview with Kathleen Shannon. Today's intro shout out goes to Elaine of Flavor and Savor. Elaine says she was listening to the Chopped podcast while zooming along the Autostrada in southern Italy. Elaine, you go, girl. You know I wish I was there with you too. I think we all wish we were there with you. So in honor of Elaine, get out that very fashionable wide brim hat, like the kind that you'd wear in southern Italy. Put on some cool shades and put on those earbuds, and let's talk about all things food blogging and so much more. Hey everyone, I'm happy to have Kathleen Shannon of Braid Creative and the Bean Boss podcast on the show today. Kathleen, welcome to the Chopped Podcast.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm so glad to have you, and I'm really looking forward to talking to you. Honestly, I could talk with you about so many things, but we've got some great things to talk about. But I thought we could start with a little bit of a background about you. I think most people know you for the Bean Boss podcast, and I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about, things that happened before that and that kind of led you to that.
Yeah, of course. So I've been blogging what feels like my whole life. And that's really where the story starts, is creating content, sharing my life online. So I was in art school in college, and I graduated with a degree in graphic design. And I worked at an advertising agency with my sister. And in the meantime, I was blogging. And back in the day, I don't know if any of your listeners remember live journal, but like I was kind of a live journal Dear Diary blogger. And I moved over to Blogspot to start blogging about remodeling my historic home with my boyfriend. And I just started sharing my life as I go. So I was talking about a home remodel, but I was also talking about trekking to Mount Everest Base Camp. And I was talking about the food I was cooking and the workouts I was doing. So I was talking about a lot of different things. And whenever I decided to quit my job as an art director in advertising, I started blogging about freelancing. And so I do not come from a family of creative entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs at all. Like my family is very much loves working for the government and getting a pension, right?
Yeah.
So really sharing the journey along the way was kind of a coping mechanism for me. But what it accidentally did was it positioned me as an expert in working for myself. But meanwhile, I had a lot of strategy and tools and know-how from working in the agency world. So I was able to bring a lot of that agency experience to my freelance career. And I think that attracted a lot of other creative entrepreneurs who were interested in doing the same thing. So what happened was through blogging, I kind of attracted my tribe of like-minded creatives. About a year after I started working for myself, my sister, who was working with a coach that we have in common, who is Jay Pryor. She started working with Jay, and Jay was like, if you could do anything, what would it be? And she was like, well, I would work with my sister. I would start a business with my sister. And then like a week later, she had quit her job and we're working together.
How much later?
Well, I say a week. About a week later, we got serious about making the plan, but it was probably about 2 to 3 months later. Wow. And she had been working at this agency for 13 years and was a creative director, vice president. I mean, yeah.
It wasn't an easy thing to do then, in other words, to leave that.
Not at all. And so we partnered up and started Braid Creative together. And we've been working with creative entrepreneurs on their branding and business visioning ever since. So that's been about 4.5 years ago. So we do copywriting, messaging, positioning, and then graphic design for other creatives.
And where did you come up with Braid Creative?
Okay, so everyone asks us that. Sometimes they think that it's because we used to braid each other's hair as kids, which we did, but it has nothing to do with that. So basically what Braid Creative is it's a method for taking all the different aspects of who you are. So you can imagine them like all the different aspects of yourself as different colored strands and really weaving them together into one story. And so for us, it's about personal branding. It's about blending what you do with who you are. It's about doing what you want to do so that you can attract your dream customer and get paid. And then we always like to kind of find the golden thread in someone's story and really look at the thing that won't change or that thing that is just the solid point of view that we want to hammer home. So that's really where the name comes from.
Kathleen, I just got chills when you said that because, I work with Jay as well. And I through working with him, I've kind of discovered these other parts of myself. And I think actually that's a big topic because a lot of us maybe don't feel connected with all parts of ourselves. But I think a lot of us do have different sides to ourselves, and finding a way to bring those together like that is so cool.
100%. And that's kind of become my life's mission, is being who I am 100% of the time and living my life and sharing it in a way that helps other people be who they are 100% of the time. So, yeah. So that's kind of my higher purpose in what I do with branding. So meanwhile, I had been blogging the whole time, and now now I started blogging for Braid Creative professionally. I started a newsletter. So all these, I just am sharing content every single day. And a lot of it is really personal based on, who I am and what I'm going through and kind of the behind the scenes. We like to give people a peek behind the curtain of what's really going on and what it really takes to create an authentic brand. So that's been my life for the last 4.5 years. About a little over a year ago, one of my creative comrades, her name is Emily Thompson, we work together a lot. We share a lot of clients. She does a lot of web development and online business strategy, and she even was maintaining a lot of our own web stuff. So she kind of helped me get my online e-course going. She's the person who's always like, okay, e-courses are where it's at, or subscription services are where it's at. But she also has like the tech know-how to implement those things. So she's just been like a creative comrade of mine. We were getting together probably once or twice a month just to have almost like weekly mastermind chats.
Yeah.
She had become what I call my business bestie, which is funny because in real life, I put that in quotes, it's not like we were super tight friends, even though we were super close. It really was like almost a mastermind group with two people. Mm-hmm. So about a little over a year ago, she approached me and with an email with like very concise bullet points saying, we need to start a podcast and here's why. And I had been a guest on quite a few podcasts and was really jiving with that medium of sharing who I am. And at the same time, blogging was starting to feel less, I was just having a harder time sharing in the blogging sphere. And I don't know if it's because I had a baby or if because I was so accessible to haters and kind of dealing with some of that. So blogging was I just felt like I was growing out of it a little bit. And podcasting became this thing where I could really share who I am again in a really candid way. And also at the same time, share my gifts of knowledge with other creative entrepreneurs and letting them know that they're not alone and that we're all figuring it out together.
Yeah. And then it just took off.
And then it took off.
I mean, the thing I love about this story is what I hear from you both on your blog and through the podcast is that you were dabbling in a bunch of different topics. You were talking about your house redesign and, all these different things. And then you landed on something that stuck and really took off. However, if you didn't do all that experimenting, you may not have found that.
100%. Yeah. It feels like an overnight success.
Yeah.
That was 10 years in the making. And there is a lot of practicing and finding our voices along the way. And we're still practicing. We're still finding our voices. We're still figuring out how to share in ways that are effective and impactful and personal. Mm-hmm. So it's every day. It's a new lesson.
And I guess the trick to that is just being okay with making mistakes.
Oh, yeah.
I'm terrible about that one. It's like I want to do everything perfect, and it's just a stupid thing to have in your head.
And not even just making mistakes, but putting yourself out there in a really vulnerable way. I mean, the thing I deal with is vulnerability hangovers.
What does that mean?
So this is a term that Brene Brown uses, and it's where after you put yourself out there, after you show up and you're being seen, the next day you're like, oh my God, what did I say? Like you might recognize the feeling if you've ever been at a party and you've maybe had one too many cocktails and you just say something dumb, like maybe everyone laughs, but the next day you're like, oh, I'm such an ass,
And what is the antidote? You just had to forgive yourself?
What is it? I mean, I think it's just about being brave enough to accept that, forgive yourself for not being perfect, for not always saying the right thing, and for knowing that part of you that says dumb stuff is the same part that resonates with so many people. It's what makes you approachable and relatable.
That's so interesting because I met this woman once who said to me, I never want to say anything I have to apologize for. And I just remember thinking, how boring. I could never do that. I mean, I say stupid things all the time, but I like that.
And it's like giving yourself permission to change your mind. I think that's the hard thing about podcasting is, okay, if I say this thing, and even blogging and sharing content at all, I think that a lot of people feel that it stunts you from growing in the future or changing your mind. And you can always change your mind.
Yes.
And you can always apologize.
Right. Yes, that's true. I do feel that that's one thing that's different about podcasting versus blogging is I can go back and delete something that I say that's stupid, but you can't with a podcast. It's just out there.
Totally.
Yeah. So one of the reasons I wanted to talk with you today was to talk about partnerships. And I think you and Emily seem to have done a really great job with that. And the reason I want to bring that up is because Personally, I feel like there's a lot of bloggers out there doing their own thing, and I think there's opportunities or creative entrepreneurs to work together. But I think the way you set up that partnership is really important. And I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about, the ways that you and Emily came together as a partnership.
I mean, it's kind of like asking someone how they found their spouse or their, boyfriend or
Yes,
girlfriend, because I have totally messed up with partnerships before.
me
Even
too.
just in the last couple of years, I entered into a partnership, a business partnership, because I felt like, oh, being boss is doing so well, I should just do all the partnerships.
Uh-huh.
And it's just not the same.
Right.
So you have to be very careful about who you partner with. And I have kind of a few outlining criteria. I've actually never really verbalized it. So I'm just going to kind of muck through this as I go here. But
I
one
love
of
it.
them is whenever you're partnering with someone, it's as if you are marrying them. And I mean that almost in very literal ways, like taking the romance out, but even there is like kind of a connection there. Like you have to kind of feel it in your gut, like you would with someone that you're going to marry.
Yeah.
Um, and I believe that there has to be a ton of communication, a ton of transparency. You're sharing, in financials. Your livelihoods begin to depend on each other. You have to make a
Mm.
lot of decisions together. So basically, you have to want to marry that person to partner with them. So for me, partnering with my sister at Braid Creative was easy in a lot of
Right.
ways because we're bound for life by family anyway. But with Emily, it was also easy, but it was so organic. And I think that what helped us is that we partnered up on a project that was not dependent on our livelihood was not dependent on this project. It was a passion
Right.
project.
Hmm.
And that passion project allowed us to see how we work together, how our skills complement each other. And it turned out that we're really great complements for each other. Now, I should back up and say we had also worked together on projects being like client projects. So I had hired her before, she had hired us, we've shared clients. So there's a lot of kind of like partnering up on projects in unofficial ways that really helped us see each other's work styles and communication styles that went into trusting each other enough to start a podcast together.
So you kind of lived together before you got married.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's
We're
good.
testing the waters first. We're
Yes.
making sure that everything feels good.
Yes. I think that's so important. And
And so with that, I think it's like my thing with partnering that I want to tell everyone is just go make friends. Make
mm,
friends, collaborate with them. You could even begin collaborating by doing guest series on their blog. I mean, for Emily and I mean, we've probably had many collaborations over the past 5 years. So it's kind of about starting small and not kind of jumping in head first. And again, this is just what worked for me. It might not be the best for everyone, which brings me to another criteria
okay.
is your partner is never going to be a silver bullet in your business. And I feel like so
Um,
many creative entrepreneurs that are feeling lonely and feeling like they're struggling want a partner almost as like a crutch or a silver bullet.
yes. I get that.
Yeah. So to expand on that a little bit, like I feel very much like Tara at Braid and Emily and Being Boss are very much, they feel like crutches and silver bullets to me because it works. But the partnership that didn't work out, I was kind of looking for a quick buck and an easy ride,
Yeah.
right? I was
Yes.
looking for like the silver bullet for real without doing the work. So I guess that's what I'm trying to say is that you might have this like ammo, but it's not a silver bullet. And everyone still has to do the work and pull the weight, and it's still not going to feel easy or fun all the time.
Well, again, that kind of comes down to the relationship thing, right? Like you can't look for someone else to complete you. You have to come into that relationship whole and hopefully meet somebody else who's whole and together you're better.
100%. Yes.
But if you're looking for someone who, is going to fix everything, then that can be very problematic.
And it's not fair to them. It's not fair to you.
Nope, that's right. When I was a COO and I left to do consulting work, I actually partnered with somebody that already had her own consultancy. And the big problems we ran into is that I assumed a lot. I assumed that she had the same level. She was like me, like she was trustworthy, and she wasn't. And so we got into big problems because we didn't have things clarified.
Yeah.
And sounds like you did a good job. I mean, is that hard when you're a friend with somebody and all of a sudden now you're going to like clarify how we are I mean, I guess would you say that's like your nuptials for getting married?
Yeah. Well, so it's funny that you say that because I've actually been divorced.
Yeah, me too.
So in some ways, going into like a prenuptial situation just feels realistic to me.
Yeah.
And talking about, okay, what happens if one of us dies is
Yes.
not really a hard conversation for me. The hard conversations for me are like, dumb little things like I'm having an issue with one of our employees and how do I handle that and
Right.
who handles it and stuff like that. But,
Yes.
going into those conversations with a friend, because Emily is such a straight shooter, it was easy. So this is another criteria. It's called the Oprah clause. We literally put this into our operating agreement.
Okay.
So it's basically like if one of us gets invited on Oprah, whose brand is it under? What does that look like? And so that way, like that kind of helps us see, okay, if big things happen to us, what does that look like for our business? What does it look like for our friendship? What does it look like for our partnership? And we're able to like really explore that and see what it is. So if Emily got invited to go on Oprah, I wouldn't be like, well, it has to be under Being Boss, unless Being Boss is invited, and it's the both of
Yes.
us. Or if Emily's invited on Oprah, she like in our clause on our operating agreement, it says like, we'll be happy for each other and we'll do the best we can to get the other person a gig too. But that overall, it is what it is.
Right.
And we also have like a don't be an asshole clause in our contract. We have a be a good person clause in our contract. And we literally define those with our lawyer. So I know that like these are funny terms and all, but like I defined it with our lawyer that this is what this means. I don't want it to be in legalese.
Yes.
But if whatever you need to do to make it binding, do that.
The real people language of this is don't be an asshole. I love it.
Yeah.
Yes. Because even though, we shouldn't have to write those things down to an agreement, I think it makes a lot of sense. It's basically saying we're going to be professional here.
Yeah, and not even that we're going to be professional, we're going to be friends. We're going to be kind. Because I think a lot of times, and that's the same thing with my sister. So we recently went through a rough patch, actually with starting Being Boss. Like, what does that mean for Braid Creative?
Oh, right.
And we went on a big business trip together, which always, whenever you're flying at 30,000 feet with someone or like in a car for 8 hours with them, you're able to have these like 30,000 feet conversations
so
or
true.
these like
Yes.
8-hour conversations.
Yes.
And so our conversation ultimately ended up being we're sisters, and we've coined it sister biz because that's like what's most important to us is that we're sisters and that we support each other. And so it's kind of that be a good person clause.
Between sisters.
Between sisters.
Oh, that's really nice.
I know. And, obviously, like, not everyone's going to be able to go into business doing that, but
Well, I think
as close as you can get.
if you can't have those hard conversations, that's probably a good sign there's a problem anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, it's funny because I had communication high on my list, and also you talked about transparency, and I think that's another important thing. And the reason I point that out is because I have this tendency to not be transparent, and I don't even know why. It's almost like in my DNA, and it's not like I'm even doing anything that interesting to hide from people. It's so fun. It's like I don't go to the boats and gamble, and I don't drink, till I'm crazy on the weekends or anything. But for some reason, I have to really work at speaking about things that are going on in my day to people.
Yeah, I get that.
I know, but
but I do it in little ways. Like if I go to lunch with a friend, like I might not tell my husband about it.
Yes.
Not even that it's like shady
Yes.
business.
Right.
Or like I don't want to have to explain what that $15 I spent at Sephora is.
Oh my God, that's so true. Right.
But like I could talk all day about, peeing myself after having a kid, or I could talk all day about,
Yes. Right.
my operating agreement with my business partner. It's just like funny little things that I don't know.
I am
So
the
I'm with
same
you
way.
there.
Yep, I get it. But so I have been working really hard lately on when things come up that, like, let's say I go to lunch with a friend and I find myself for some reason not wanting to say that to my husband for some stupid, I don't even know why. And I just make myself just say it. I had lunch with a friend today,
Yeah,
and his reaction is usually very like, oh, okay, good.
I
Nothing
know. And
unexpected.
it's not even that it would be negative or bad. It's just like, I wonder if it is just being married and being in all these partnerships. For me, it's like, do I have any sense of privacy? And then having a 2-year-old on top of that who's like constantly
Yes.
groping me. Like, we're just
Yes.
like,
Yes. Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that because I went to a conference over the weekend in Los Angeles, which was a lot of fun. And I actually ended up sharing rooms with two other people to help, one reason is to save costs. That was a big one. And it was also that this person had a hotel room that was really close to the event, which is great. But I have this tendency to want to be alone, but I actually found myself I enjoyed having roommates, and I think it was really good for me to. I got a lot of great tips from them. They're also in the same industry, and I don't know. It was just it was a great experience. I sometimes think my desire to be alone sometimes needs to be squelched.
I agree.
Yeah,
I like that. And I like challenging myself,
yeah,
by doing things like going to conferences and having roommates and again, like showing up and being seen. Like that's
yeah.
huge.
Do you have any other tips on partnerships? Because if not, I want to kind of switch gears just for a few minutes.
Um, I mean, I think, just the biggest one is work on a project together first and see
I
how
love
that
that.
goes without pressure.
Yes.
And then that's a good way to get started. So that would be my number one tip.
I love that. And then have difficult conversations about these kinds of, Oprah clauses or whatever. And if those don't go well, it's
Yeah,
maybe not a good sign to work together.
probably not. And then
Yeah.
I think that the other thing that I might do is like, I'm very emotional whenever it comes to business, and I do a lot of business based on gut feelings, which
Yeah.
isn't always the best decision. Um, but I think that looking at what your values are, so like Emily and I, whenever we partnered up on Being Boss, we really looked at the values and why we're doing this, what we want out of it, a lot of goal setting. So, like, putting numbers to paper, which was challenging for me. And so just like a marriage, she challenges me to be a better boss and to be a better business person.
Hmm.
So does my sister Tara. Like, and I think that your partner should challenge you to do better. And
Oh,
so whether that's doing things that take you out of your comfort zone, but that are good for you, that's great. But I think it's just like looking at your values and saying, what is it that we want out of this? If it's $1 million and that's not your value, then maybe don't partner with that person. If it's to reach the same kind of audience and that's all about your value of like humor and authenticity, then yes, like partner up on a project. So that's
right.
my thing all too, is just making sure that not only are your goals aligned, but that your values are aligned and that you can always come back to those values when making hard decisions and having hard conversations.
Yeah, that's really great. I could actually even see people that, if you have somebody you're thinking about a partnership with, actually sit down and have a discussion and say, when you're working on a project, what are your values? Just ask those questions. That's good.
And then I think the final thing that I've learned from being business partners with my sister and with Emily is just assuming that they have your best intentions in mind and that you have their best. And
Mm,
that everyone has the best intentions. Like, so
yes.
never making negative assumptions, even if that might be more true. I think it's making the best assumptions. You can work from a more positive place and a more creative place.
Okay, so that is huge because that's one thing that Jay has worked with me on a lot. And that is, I have this tendency to see people and I don't know, maybe they got gas. I have no idea why they're making a negative face to me. And I just jump to all these conclusions like, oh, they don't like me. This is it. We're done. Jay has really helped me with that.
Yeah, and it probably has nothing to do with you.
Yes. I'm surprised actually at how much I jump to these negative assumptions about people, especially when I'm thinking about maybe what they're thinking about me. So
Yeah,
I've really had to work on that. It's a good thing to do, to give people the benefit of the doubt all the time.
all the time.
Yes.
And so, like, for example, if Emily makes a call and doesn't consult me on it, and I don't necessarily agree, then I'll think she has our business, like the best intentions for our business in mind. She's not trying to tank us, you
Right.
know?
You don't have to go, oh, she did that because she knew that I didn't want this to happen. That's why she did it over there.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Or like she doesn't care what I think. No, of
Yeah.
course she does. We're just moving at a really fast pace.
Yes, exactly.
And the same with me. Like, so to be very specific, earlier this week, she was on vacation, and I was scheduling a call for this Friday, like a webinar for us. And it totally conflicts with an engagement that she has, like for another project that she's doing. And I felt really bad about it. And like she could have easily gotten upset about it. But instead I was like, hey, I'm so sorry. I was just trying to make the call. You know, I know that we don't have like a system in place for this and that you were on vacation. You know, I'm sorry. And it wasn't a big deal at all.
Oh,
And
that's
so
great.
I think that she gave me a lot of grace in assuming that like I wasn't trying to mess up her schedule. You know?
That wasn't your goal in life.
Right. Or like if you get overbooked on your calendar, it's not because someone's trying to ruin your life.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. Do you think this is something that women struggle with more than men as far as giving people the benefit of the doubt?
I don't know. I think about men and women a lot whenever it comes to business and doing the work. And I think that guys are, I have to be careful how I phrase this.
I get this. Because we both work with a lot of them.
Yeah, I think that guys are just a little bit more simple and like what you see is what you get. But at the same time, what they're lacking in layers that sometimes make us like emotional or complex or, you know, it's more than with women. A business decision might be more personal than it is with men, but I think that's what makes us really great business leaders, you know? And so
exactly.
I think it's just masculine and feminine qualities. And I think it's really important for every entrepreneur, no matter what gender, to really embrace both qualities. I learned so many from the men that I have worked with and their styles. And I've also learned so much from the women. And anyway, so I don't know that it's a guy-girl issue whenever it comes to being judgmental or making assumptions. I also think that women typically are more empathic. And so like we can read body language, we can read minds, we can,
Yep.
you know, we can intuit like what's going on beyond what's being said.
I often say that women are like elephants. I don't know if you know this, but have you heard these stories about elephants that they can communicate with each other through the ground? Did you know that?
Oh, I didn't know that.
They make these like deep vibrational noises that humans can't hear. And so they're like communicating with elephant miles away and humans don't even know this. And I kind of feel like that's how women are too.
Yes.
Men are like, what? What? She didn't mean anything. It's like, no, there was something going on there.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And that's probably something else about partnerships is like learning each other's fighting styles.
Oh, right. You got to be able to argue and fight.
Yeah, you have to know how to fight.
I agree. Being able to fight and get past that. I mean, that's one thing I've learned from my husband this time around. That's not in the first marriage, the second marriage. But, you know, it took me a long time to realize that you could fight and stay together.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was like, okay, I guess this is over now. You know, he's like, what's going on with you? What's wrong?
You're like, oh, we're not breaking up?
Yeah, we just had an argument. Isn't this over? So that's a really good tip because if you don't have those arguments, it probably will lead to the arrangement not working out.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay, so there's something I'm dying to talk with you about, and that is just a topic I bring up with a lot of people, and I feel like this is something you really own, and it's a topic of authenticity.
I love talking about authenticity.
Me too.
It is like my life's purpose, authenticity.
I feel like you live authenticity, whereas I prefer to talk about it and try to understand it. And I don't know that I apply it as well as I want to. So that's one reason I'm really thrilled to talk to
Okay,
you
so
about
let me ask you this. I'm curious because I do feel like I really do live it.
it. Yeah.
I didn't even understand that it was a core value of mine until like 6 months of therapy. You know?
Yes. Yeah.
And like obviously, Brene Brown, her work on authenticity and vulnerability really strike a chord with me. I love her work.
Yeah.
I was voted most nonconformist every year in high school, or through
Yes.
through grade school even. So authenticity is something, just being who I am and living out loud is something that I've been doing my whole life. So I'm curious to hear from you, like, in what ways do you think that you're not living an authentic life?
Well, I mean, you were voted most nonconformist. I probably would have been voted most conformist if I was voted anything in high school because I just was one of those. I mean, I think because I grew up such a people pleaser. And I do think I am highly empathetic. So I have this tendency to know what I think people are, what they're needing in a situation. And that's what I try to give. And I'm working really hard on now knowing what I need in a situation and understanding that gives me a better ability to be myself in the moment. But it's work, let me tell you.
It's funny because I think that I'm people pleasing also.
Really?
I like for people to like me. And I remember whenever I was working in advertising, my goal every day was to make everyone around me, to make their job easier on them.
Oh, that's nice.
But it never feels like martyry or sacrificial. If anything, I feel incredibly self-serving and indulgent most times.
By helping other people?
Not by helping other people, but just, I don't feel like I'm ever sacrificing anything. So even being the mom of a 2-year-old, a lot of moms can get real, sacrificial and like martyry.
Yes.
But I like to take care of myself first. And if that means that my kid is going to daycare for 8 hours, like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
If it means that I'm working 6 hours instead of 8 hours so I can make some time to go to the gym, it's not a big deal.
But see, you know that about yourself. You know that on the days that you work out, you feel better. So that's why you do that?
Yeah, and because I want a six-pack.
I love that. That is so great. I also, another thing that we share in common is we ended up getting our hair cut about the same time. I went and got my hair cut really short. And then I happened to notice that you did that as well. And so I'm like, this is really cool. And I think cutting my hair has made a big difference on me on the topic of authenticity.
Yeah.
I read the book, what is that? The Art of Tidying Up. Did you read that?
Yeah.
It had a little
bit
of
an everyday challenge for me.
I know. But when I got my hair cut, it was like, yep, that sweater's gone. I mean, before I would kind of like go, I don't know, maybe I'll wear it again, maybe this or that. But, once I got my hair cut, it just seems like, nope, never wearing that again. It's gone. And just, it was so much easier for me.
You're not going to believe this. I cut my hair after reading that book too.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
That was a big thing to go.
Yes.
Yeah. It was no longer bringing me joy. So I had dreadlocks down to my waist.
Wow. That's a big shift to go from dreadlocks to short hair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it was no longer serving me and no longer bringing me joy.
Yes.
And so I cut it all off.
Yes.
And, it's so funny because whenever I had my locks, I remember thinking, I've never felt more like myself. And now they're gone, and I think I've never felt more like myself. So I think that whenever it comes to authenticity, it's like, what makes you feel most like yourself? And so like I think about my sister, for example, is kind of the opposite of me, but I think also very authentic. And in her authenticity, making me a sandwich makes her feel like herself. So kind of like meeting other people's needs, I think it makes her feel, I could be totally wrong. But I think it's about just asking yourself the question, what will make me feel more like me?
What will make me feel more like me? Also, do you think there's something to like taking the time to know yourself and to accept yourself, flaws and all?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. So it's so funny that full circle, like connecting so many dots right here. So last week I had a really hard time after doing my taxes.
Yeah.
And then I was embarrassed that I was upset about my taxes because like first world problems.
Yeah.
So my sister came over with a glass of wine and I got into this mode where I just wanted to like have control over some things because I felt very out of control about my taxes and like I couldn't figure it out. And so I was looking around my house and I was like, you know what? I just need to Marie Kondo everything. I need to get rid of all this clutter. And it's not even like I have a bunch of clutter, but I was like, none of this stuff is bringing me joy. Let me get rid of all of it. So my sister goes, Kathleen, you do not need to get rid of anything. You do not need to Marie Kondo your house. And my sister's like a Marie Kondo devotee. Like she's probably her number one student. Like my sister read the book and did it by the book.
Oh my God.
And her whole house is organized right now.
Oh, I'm jealous.
Right. So she's like, Kathleen, you don't need to do that. Like you just need to keep working out. You need to keep washing your face. You need to keep putting yourself out there. Like she's listing the things I am good at that almost I think that she wishes that she was good at.
Oh.
And like little things. And it made me realize how much attention I had been putting on my flaws and realizing that that was not productive or creative or serving anyone.
Yeah.
Like me tidying up my house to Marie Kondo standards is not going to help me change the world in the way that I want to change it, which is helping other people be who they are 100% of the time.
Oh, wow. That is huge. So it's not, I mean, you can focus too much on the flaws, but really it's about knowing your strengths and being that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And so like for me also, it's funny because I have wabi sabi tattooed on my arm as like a constant reminder that flaws are beautiful. I'm definitely a perfectionist. And whenever I do anything, I want to do it the best and I want to do it all the way.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah, but there's like not enough time and things are flawed. And just remembering that, you know, like cracks in the china and then filling it with gold, like that's kind of the wabi-sabi aesthetic. Like that's beautiful. Or a tree that has grown into the side of a house, that is beautiful. Like these things that can be kind of messed up are in fact beautiful.
So finding the beauty of being your best, but also kind of letting that go organically as well.
Well, yeah, and like finding the beauty in imperfections and finding the beauty in what is temporary. I think that a lot of it comes from attachments, like attachments to who we once were or who we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And really just letting go of that and realizing that who I am yesterday, where I felt most like myself with locks down to my waist, is not how I feel most like myself today with a shaved head.
Yeah. You know what I think one thing is hard about being authentic today is that there are so many images out there of not just people, but, you know, like you can go on Instagram and look at 100, you know, different photos of food and, you know, there's, I don't know, people's houses, all these things that look so perfect and, or, you know, maybe even just the image of what it looks like is attractive, but does that necessarily mean, you know, I want an all white house with white furniture and white, you know, whatever. It's like, at least for me, I start to think like, what is it that I authentically like? I don't even know sometimes.
You know, I mean, I love being on Instagram for like an hour or two at a time, scrolling through those beautiful white houses.
Yes.
And my house is all white and it's beautiful. And I use those images to see what it is that I want, to almost help me mood board my life. And so one thing that Jay says that has stuck with me forever is if you can see it, it's yours. And speaking in language is great. I love it. But there's nothing like seeing an image to really capture specifically what you want.
Yeah.
So I can look at an image of a house that I think is beautiful and start to use that as inspiration. I think the balance is not thinking that you're not good enough just because your house isn't there yet. I think it's using those images as inspiration for what you like and as a mood board to help you identify what it is that you want.
Ah, that's great.
So really it's just reframing this like jealousy, picture perfect Pinterest, Instagram life into, wow, that is beautiful. How can I get more of that in my world? Okay, like how can I get that six pack? I guess I need to start eating better and moving more. How can I get those white walls? Well, I literally need to go buy some white paint.
Yes.
And you do that and you're one step closer to what it is that you want. Now, the problem I found with being authentic is, so you get those white walls, you get that six pack, you get whatever it is that you want, and maybe you're still not happy.
Yeah.
So then it's like, okay, what is this? And that's where it's like, before we got on our call, we were talking about authenticity and like David Bowie versus like a homeless person, which is
Yeah.
more authentic. And so what you were saying there is like David Bowie is putting on all these different outfits and costumes. And is that facade authentic?
Yeah.
Versus a homeless person where it's kind of like what you see is what you get and it's stripped down to the bare bones.
Right.
I think both are forms of authenticity, but I think that authenticity is about, again, making you feel most like yourself. So I don't know that a homeless person feels most like themselves in that state. I
Right.
think David Bowie 100% felt most like himself as Ziggy Stardust. Or whatever it is that he was wanting to portray at the time and not being attached to it from one day to the next.
I
Like
got you. Yes.
same with Madonna or anyone else. So like
Yes.
authenticity is it's moving and it's changing.
Well, and maybe that outfit that David Bowie would put on would provide a little bit of anonymity. And I mean, like maybe behind the curtain of anonymity, we all are a little bit more authentic.
Ooh,
Does that make
yeah.
sense?
Yeah. But I don't know if that made him more anonymous or if it made his outsides match more of what he was feeling on the inside.
Yeah. Okay. I get that.
So like that's where like whenever it comes to my style, I am always just trying to get my outsides to feel more of like what I feel like on the inside. So whether that's a post-apocalyptic badass or a crunchy yoga hippie or whatever it is.
Yeah. I love that. And so then the trick really is to just like be in touch with who you are on the inside, make the outside feel like that as well.
Right. And so then whenever it comes to like authenticity and living that out loud, not doing it behind a veil of anonymity comes like courage. Courage to be enthusiastic about the things you love. Like think about how many friends you've bonded with over gossip or
Right.
over what you don't like.
Yeah.
I think it takes a lot of courage to stand up and say, I like this. I like wearing blue eyeshadow, or I like shaving my head, or I like, it's easy to use fashion as an example, but even like, I'm not a Christian, or I am, like getting
Right.
into like deep stuff like faith, or I support Bernie Sanders. I think it's really scary for people to authentically talk about the stuff that they like and support.
I
It's so
agree.
much easier for me to talk about how I don't like Donald Trump than it is for me to talk about why I like Bernie Sanders.
Interesting. I
You know
get
what
you.
I mean?
Yes, exactly.
So, oops, sorry, dropped my mic.
Sorry.
Drop the mic. I think that authenticity a lot of times is having the courage to be enthusiastic about the things that you love versus cynical about the things that you don't love.
Interesting. That's so profound that you say that because I have been in my head thinking about how cynical I can be about some things throughout the week. Like maybe I'm at the conference. Okay, so I give you an example. You're being so great about giving concrete examples. And I'm watching a presenter speak and he's talking about something that he's doing. And in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, yeah, you're talking about this because you're trying to sell more books, dude, or whatever. I mean, how cynical is that? What if he's just up there sharing because he wants to help other people?
Well, and also I think it's like following that train of thought. So why is it so bad that he wants to sell a lot of his books?
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's not a bad thing either. Yeah,
So that's another trick. Is like, why is that so bad? And I think that's
right,
another question that you can ask yourself to be authentic. Like, why is it so bad to people please? Why is it so bad to not people please?
right.
And just asking yourself, why is that so bad, will kind of unlock and take you deeper. And you can keep asking, okay, so, well, he's just he's just capitalizing on all these people. He wants to sell his book. Well, what message does his book share that
Yeah,
is valuable and
right.
important?
Maybe it's got a really great message and he feels really passionate about it, right?
And I'm not trying to be like Pollyanna-ish about this by any means, because I think that there are people who are authentically assholes,
Yeah. Trump being one of them.
Trump being one of them.
Yeah.
That's just not, I think it is like, I think that part of being authentic is aspiring to who you want to be. So let's say like we're naturally negative or naturally judgy. Who is it that we want to be in the world? And I think it's just being honest about your current experience. So Okay, here's a concrete example about
Okay.
this. Like, I'm really getting in touch with my spirituality, and I'm trying out a lot of different things. Like, I went to church with a friend, a few weeks ago. I have a deck of tarot cards. I'm taking like a witchy e-course on the moon, like a bunch of different things,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
Having lots of different conversations. And in one of these e-courses, there were a lot of women like talking like something out of, I don't even know. And I don't mean to be judgmental here, but like they're talking about like embracing the energy of their yonis and, like
And you're like, what?
I'm like, wait, are you talking about your hoo-ha? So then it's like, so then it's exactly that. It's like using the words that you actually use. And maybe perhaps for those women, talking about the energy of their yoni is what's authentic to them. But for me, I'm probably going to say vag.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And then it's being brave enough to say, okay, I can kind of see where you're coming from. Here's what I'm feeling in my vag right now. Like just like putting it out there as I am and not trying
Yeah.
to mirror who they are back at them, but trying to show them who I really am. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes absolute sense. And the fact that that takes courage, I really feel that.
So I think the same thing happens. Sorry, not to like talk about vages, but like let's talk about it in a professional setting. Let's say you're in a professional or like you come from a corporate background where a lot of people use the same jargon
Yep.
and talk in a certain way. You can start to adopt that as a part of your identity. But then it's stripping it back and saying, okay, what is it that I'm really trying to say here? What do I really mean? What is the most honest way I can say this?
I get this because it can be like it really feeds into your ego to let everybody else know, I know this secret language. I can speak it too. Look how great I am.
Yeah.
But the courage to just use plain language or use the language that's coming from your heart or whatever is so important.
Yeah, and the courage to say, I don't know what that means, or the courage to
Yes.
say, could you elaborate?
Oh,
Or the
that's,
courage to
yeah.
say, I don't know that I agree that, we can be more authentic behind a anonymity, like so,
Yes.
but not doing it from a place of debate or like conflict, but of a place of like curiosity.
Right. It's so funny that you say that because I was actually getting on the elevator with this woman and some other woman, and this one woman talked about how she was at the conference. You know how you always ask that question, well, why are you here at this conference? She was talking about some documentary about this person and the conversation. I mean, it was like quiet, completely quiet. And then she gets off, and this other lady and I said, do you know who she was talking about? Like, we both didn't want to admit we didn't know who she was talking about
Right.
because we felt like, we would look stupid if we didn't know.
Yeah, I think it's like being brave enough to look stupid.
Yes, being brave to look stupid. Because chances are, if you have the question, a lot of other people have the question too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then it gives that person an opportunity to be like, oh my gosh, you haven't heard of. Let me tell you about this person in the documentary. It's amazing. It will change your life. And then
right.
you'll actually probably be more likely to watch that documentary.
You're right. I mean, honestly, that's a very good point. She probably wanted to say more, but, the silence was too hard to cut through.
So all of this is like in this conversation of authenticity, I feel like kind of the way the conversation that we're having is like, how can you be authentic without pissing people off? And I just want to say for the record that I piss a lot of people off.
Really?
Totally. And it's kind of that too is like giving people permission to not like me or, giving myself permission to not be everybody's cup of tea. And that
Yeah.
comes from years of like being a bratty teenager or being a know it all 20 something. So for me now it's coming to this place of knowing that I don't know anything, but that this is the experience I'm having. And if I can share it with other people, they might feel more comfortable in the experience that they're having too.
So do you get people who vocally, I mean, they send you emails or whatever telling you they don't like you?
Oh, sure. There's like a whole forum on the internet full of people that don't like me.
And you handle that. I mean, I heard your one podcast episode where, honestly, I use what you say on that episode about when people say they don't like something, you just go, whatever,
Whatever.
whatever.
Okay. Okay. I think that's like, so one of the things I hate is being misunderstood.
Yeah.
And I feel like haters it's just one big misunderstanding.
Yes.
And it's no longer my job, and it's never been my job to win over the haters. And if I'm focusing on trying to win them over, it's like, what for? Whenever
Right.
I could just be doing the work that I'm doing. So for me, especially if it's like a statement that I know not to be true, it's like them telling me that grass is hot pink. And I can say, whatever, that grass is green,
Yeah.
But then it's like whenever they say something that is true and kind of like hits hard. So they might say that grass is brown and you need to water your lawn. I might be like, oh my God, you're right.
I know. I've been worried about that. I think it is kind of brown. Yes.
And that's whenever it hurts. And that's whenever it's like, okay, here's what's going on. That grass is brown because I'm in here recording podcasts and doing the work, and that's just not a priority.
Right.
So then it's like prioritizing the hate.
Yes. I love it. This has been so good. I really have enjoyed this discussion. I've been wanting to have this with you, and I think this is something that's hopefully helpful to a lot of people. Follow your path. That's what I'm hearing over and over. Know your passion, know yourself, follow that. Just a lot of great stuff in there.
But I also want to say, not to be like contrary, but I don't know that you have to know your passion or know yourself. I think you just have to be on the path and take one step at a time. And in hindsight, you'll be able to like connect some dots.
I see. So know yourself today.
Know yourself today.
Yeah.
I like that. Because
Yeah.
sometimes I just feel like I don't know what I'm passionate about. Like sometimes even my job feels like a job.
Yes.
And sometimes I don't feel like I know who I am at all.
Yeah.
And so that's whenever it is about really just getting curious. So like that's what I would say is like get on your path and get curious about it.
Ooh.
And just ask a ton of questions like, why is that so bad? What would make me feel more like me? How could I say what I really mean right now? What is it that I really need right now? And then just being okay with all of it. It's all good. YOLO.
I love it. Okay, so I had a couple of fun questions for you, just quick ones here at the end of the interview. This is for food bloggers, so I got to ask you something
right,
about
right.
food. So what's one food item
I love
you can't?
food.
Oh, good. What's one food item you can't live without?
Okay, can I tell you my favorite meal?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's oatmeal.
Oatmeal's your favorite meal?
Oatmeal is like my favorite food. So here's what I do though. Like since this is for foodies, I
Yep.
think I can describe this. I'll try and be quick.
Okay.
But I cut up an apple. I saute it in coconut oil. Then I throw a quarter of a cup of steel cut oats on that apple and kind of let that toast.
Uh-huh.
I throw some Maldon sea salt on top of that, like a generous saltiness.
Wow.
Then I add a little bit of water so the pan is hot, so it's sizzling now.
Yeah.
And I let it boil. I throw in some raisins, hemp seeds, flax, cinnamon, cardamom,
I love cardamom.
almond butter. Then I'm like whisking all that together. Then at the very end, I finish it off. I throw 2 eggs in there and whisk that in. And so this isn't like super sweet because I try and stay away from sugar, but like you could add some maple syrup in there.
Uh-huh.
I could eat it all day, every day.
It sounds really filling. I mean, you probably could eat that all day.
Yeah, and like it's super filling, and no one can hang with me whenever it comes to like eating oatmeal. Like I'll have a huge bowl, and anyone that I have over, like even like huge guys, they're like, "Oh, I'm so full,"
And you keep going, right?
and I keep going.
You're
It's
like the
my
Forrest Gump of
favorite-
oatmeal.
Yeah, I am totally the Forrest Gump of oatmeal, and it is so. And I get asked a lot about this oatmeal, and I get asked for the recipe, and I eat it all the time, and it's kind of boring, but it's like just my comfort place. I had it today for lunch.
That's so cool. Maybe one of the food bloggers will take a really awesome photo and share it with you.
Yes, I would love that.
Yeah.
Or I would love to, like, if the food bloggers listening to this would like make their own spin on
Yeah.
oatmeal, and I will literally try out every single one.
What would you call this dish if you were naming it?
So, okay, for a while I made it without the oats
Uh-huh.
because I was kind of going more paleo route, and I called it paleo-oats.
Ah, love it.
Yeah.
That's very good.
But with the oats, I don't know. Like some of my followers still call it paleo-oats, even with the oats in it. But I would probably call it like a badass bowl of oats. Can oats be badass?
I think you just made a badass, so they are. I love it. Okay, cool. So, okay, what's the favorite app on your phone?
Oh my gosh. I'm like reaching for my phone. I mean, probably Instagram. I'm always on Instagram. Does that count?
It counts. It's a very popular app these days.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you have any time for TV? And if you do you have, what's a
Oh,
favorite show?
totally. I used to tell people like I don't trust anyone that doesn't watch TV.
I know. What's wrong with them?
I love TV. Love it. So right now I'm watching the new season of Girls on HBO.
Yeah,
Is so good.
really.
Oh, so good. Have you watched Girls?
I've watched some previous episodes, but I think, it's one of those shows, it's kind of like The Office. When I first watched it, I didn't really like it. And then I tried it again and I loved it.
Yeah, like you either love it or
So I'll give Girls a try again.
I watched The Leftovers on HBO and kind of became like obsessed with that. It's by the creators of Lost,
Ooh,
but I never watched Lost. So I also watch Shameless. That's on Showtime. I watch Orange is the New Black on Netflix.
that's good.
And these days I watch a lot of like kid shows with my
Oh,
kid.
yeah, yeah.
So that's kind of boring.
What about House of Cards? Do you watch that one?
So I watched the first two seasons, and then it was like getting into the third season, I just fell out of it.
Yeah.
But I've heard that the third season was the worst, and then if you can power through that, that the fourth season is really good.
It is really good. We're in the fourth season right now, and I'm really enjoying it. We also watched recently. Oh my God, what is that? Mr. Robot.
I haven't even heard of that.
I think it's Showtime. You should check it out. It's really good.
Oh, okay.
It's very techie, geeky kind of show. It's really
Oh,
good.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Is there any like sex in it?
I don't.
My shows have to have a little bit of sex in it.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's any sex in this one. I'm trying to think through it. No, it's really more of a mind twister, which is kind of cool. It's deep and dark.
Okay, I'll check it out.
Check it out. I think if you like the first episode, you'll like the rest of it, but it's interesting.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. How can people find you online, Kathleen?
Okay, so I'm at beingboss.club. And so we write articles there. We post our podcasts there. You can find us on iTunes if you just search Being Boss. I'm also at braidcreative.com. We always have an e-course available on branding and business visioning, but we're also available for branding and one-on-one. We've actually worked with a few foodies before.
Awesome.
I'm also on Instagram and like social media. It's at and Kathleen. So A-N-D Kathleen. And that's Kathleen. I think that's all the places I am.
That's great. And I think you do some Periscope too, don't you?
Oh, I do some Periscope. So that's also at and Kathleen.
Love it. Kathleen, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me
my
today. I had a
gosh.
great time.
I had a great time. I feel like I could talk to you all day. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks so much to Kathleen Shannon for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. Be sure to go to choppedpodcast.com to buy your ticket to the Chopped Conference, learn more about today's show, and sign up for our newsletter to get the latest and greatest on all things food blogging. Tune in next week as I talk to Lee Hirsch of the site Fit Foodie Finds about how to incorporate fitness into your everyday life. It's such a great discussion, and I'm really excited to share it with you soon. I hope you're loving the Chop Podcast. You can show your support for this show by leaving a review on iTunes or Stitcher. You can share about the show on social media or even leave a link on your own blog or podcast. And I love getting your emails too. It all means so much. I hope you inspire me, and I hope today's show is helpful and inspirational to you as well. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.